Welcome back to another video, everyone. We're here for the edge mid-range. I was going to do the edge and the halves together, but there's a lot of guys I want to talk about in this edge position, so it'd be better to separate a couple of shorter videos. But to start off with, we have Jordan Riki. I just want to speak about him a little bit. I definitely think there's some upside. Obviously, someone that's only played one full season and a couple of games at the back end of 2020, just for some shorter minutes off the interchange and that 180-minute role. But he's someone that we all started with at the beginning of last year. Started really, really slow with 10 missed tackles and then had an awesome game with a big line break and plenty of tackle busts there and had sort of a solid season, let's say, up and down, what you'd expect for an edge back rower in a pretty average side. But coming towards the back end of the year is what we want to talk about, especially is his couple of big games. He obviously had 3 tries to round out the end of the year there. And a couple of big scores, and even a 59 in a full 80-minute effort with no tries was really, really cool. I think his tackling efficiency improved a fair bit. Even he was making more tackles for one, but obviously a couple of games there, 46 tackles for 0 misses, 48 for 3. We're pretty happy with 38 for 2 at the end there, and 29 for 1 miss. Obviously 2 games there with 5 misses, but for him, there's obviously going to be some natural upside. He's a really, really talented player. The price of 46 is my worry. If he was priced somewhere around the 38 mark, I'd say that we'd probably be able to get some value out of him. And you pick him up under 500k. But just at this point in time, I think there's a little bit of a risk picking him up. He's going to be playing next to Reynolds, which is pretty cool. But just the volatility, is tough. He could have a bunch of games of 30, and then you're probably going to trade him out anyway. If he starts slow, or you could get lucky and he starts with a few 70s, but then comes back to the pack anyway. So that's what I'd think about with Jordan. But if he happens to improve as a player, which we'll have a look at in the trials and stuff like that as well, and obviously of the first few games, but I don't think you need to start with him. You can pick him up later if he does really well. So that's that for Jordan there. We go to Britton Nakora next, and he's someone that had a really, really good All-Stars game, right? He's someone that's always been a pretty solid scorer. My worry with him is that I'm not really seeing him as becoming a long-term keeper. When he burst on the scene a bunch of years ago, 2018 maybe? 19. Playing in the second row as a starter, playing 80 minutes was exactly what we needed as a guy, that we could pick up in the centres. So you can see he had a bunch of really good games. A few with tries, 50s, 60s were pretty common at the start before he went back to sort of that 30 to 40 mark, with the odd big game, right? So he's got this random 60 and 70 when he scores tries. Since that time, his try scoring has slowed down a little bit for sure, but you have a look at the majority of his games here, and we have a few around the 50 mark, 170 in there, and a bunch of sort of mid-40s, the odd 20-minute game, obviously of the interchange, 16 in 54 minutes, 29 in 73 minutes. So he has that ability to have a lower game. You see a 38 there as well. So for him to be priced at 44, you'd want to be picking up as a keeper, right? Anything below an average of 50 is going to be seen as sort of a wasted pick, when you could pick someone else that would be around that price. Not that there's many in that 500-ish K mark that can get to a keeper, but you'd like him to at least show some value. And he's someone that does make some tackle breaks as well, right? So we're going to lose a little bit from that and not make too much up in the offloads department. So for him, I can see him averaging somewhere in the mid-40s again. He's going to have those games that he did in the All-Stars where he's going to make 35 tackles, run 150 meters, score a try, and then he's going to have games where he gets 25 tackles, a bunch of misses, and also runs for like 80 meters and no tries and picks up that 30 odd, which ruins that average there. So that's my thoughts on Britton. Solid player, could improve as a player in a better side. Having Nico on his right side there might help him, but we'll have to find out how that looks in their second trial, I think, when they're all going to play. But we'll move to Satili Tupeneur. At 535k, he's a really solid player, and in a Rooster side that's going to be pretty good. I don't see his try scoring ability dropping by any way, shape, or form. At price at 43 with 5.7% of owners, I actually understand this pick for sure. If you look at the beginning of his year, you look at a bunch of really good scores. Obviously, 2 tries at the start to go with mid-30s tackles and close to 100 meters gained. And was really solid through the middle part. Obviously, another couple of tries. Had a few games where he I remember he had a head injury in one of them, then came off the interchange in that next round, and then sort of slowly built back to that close to 80 minutes. But if you look at his back end of the season, the last 5 to 6 games he had played a game in centre, then moved back to the second row, and had some low ones. So very interesting with him. A few games with big missed tackles, which he can do, but if you look at the start of the season, he's looking at that 2 to 3. If we can get him somewhere around that 2, 3, 4 missed tackle mark, then I can see him having some value priced at 43. With Kiri on his inside, I can see him at least getting the tries that he was getting last year. And if he continue with that 80-minute role in a good side, having good defenders around him as well, hopefully a few less missed tackles. So there's definitely some upside for him. He's a pretty young guy. I can definitely see him possibly becoming a keeper. But again, it's a question mark. So if you are picking him up, he's a little bit of a pod at 6%, but you're banking on him becoming a keeper in that edge spot. So keep that in mind for him. All right, Luki Garner, someone I'm not as high on, just mainly for the fact that Tigers scare me. You can see when he gets some time on the park, he's obviously a pretty solid scorer, right? And he had a good year when we first came onto the scene in 2019, when we really all picked him up. He was getting some good scores in 80-minute rolls, getting the odd try as well. You can see the back end of 2019, 4 tries in a row to get a couple of 70s and a couple of good 40s. So he was a nice cash cow that year for sure. But even previous years, look at 2020, for example, a bunch of good scores, 50, 60, 70, mixed in with some low 40s and mid 30s, right? There's something to think about. And last year, spent a little bit of time on the interchange, but still very close to an 80-minute roll or a 70-minute roll in majority of games. But you're looking at too many 30s and low 40s in amongst the try-scoring games when he gets to 60 or 70. So that's why he's priced around that 40 mark, is just for that reason, and owned by 0.4%. It makes sense at this stage. I just don't see the upside for Luki this early in the season. If he happens to come off the bench or lose some price and he gets down to about a 400k mark and then moves back into the starting side, then he could be someone to look at picking up in your side. All right, Jaden Sue is an interesting one. He moves over to the Dragons, and he just never has had that. He just never really has the big games to bump up the average. If we look at some of his scores there, you're not looking at many here above the 50 mark, right? A lot of games in the 40s. He has a 59 last year. And then right at the back end of the year, he had a double for 84 and a single try for 54. So his main issue is his tackling, in terms of he only gets between that 25 to 35 would be his max. You got a couple of 36s in there. And meters gain, you're never getting much over 120, 130 with a bunch of lower gains where he kind of not goes missing, but he just doesn't get the ball. So does that change in a newer team? I wouldn't be taking the punt. They have a lot of middle forwards, a lot of edge forwards as well in that side. Will he be getting 80 minutes? I don't even think he does. So that's something that's a little bit of an issue to think about for Sua. So I'm just going to pass on him for this stage of the season. So, okay, well, 511k. So the price is not too bad, right? We get some small upside out of him. I think with him being priced around that, around the 40 mark, 41 there, I see them having a chance of averaging 50, but he's only getting that extra 10 to 15 minutes. If you look at the majority of his games, when he is playing in the second row, they're pretty close to that 70 average. He'll have a couple of lower ones, but overall, and a couple of 80s. So overall, it's about that 65 to 68 minutes there. On an edge, he had a couple of center games, which bumps up his average minutes as well. But if we're looking solely at those edge minutes, then there's probably 10 to 15 minutes available for him. I'd imagine he's going to get that 80 on an edge and be one of their most important forwards for sure. But he's very volatile, right? He's going to lose a few for tackle breaks, and he's going to have to keep scoring the tries that he did to keep that nice average. So for me, he's a little bit of a touch and go pickup. I can see him being solid and getting closer to that 50 price. I don't see him as being a top line keeper unless he plays a different role in the Broncos side. So I think it's going to be important to see what he does in the trials. Does he get involved a little bit more in the tackling side of things? Because you look at his scoring, it's very up and down. Like he's got games there where he scores tries and gets that mid-60s, 50s, 70, you can see there. But he's got a 70-minute game for 32, 64 with a try, which is 33 points there. A few good games is sprinkled in with some, we look to a couple more of his 80-minute rolls. Again, a try for 54, 37 in a 70-minute effort. Moving on to a nice good one, a 62, which included a couple of offloads, a couple of tackle breaks. But you've got 42 in there, 43, a 20 in center, 34 in the second row. So it's just a bit up and down. For me, if he can keep his missed tackles low, then he's going to be great. But can you see that changing in a side that isn't as good? unless they have a different strategy at the Panthers where he comes out of the line a little bit more, and you get those ones where you're copying it in the arm, and just getting those lazy missed tackles. I'm not sure. He's very obviously aggressive on offense and defense. So does that change? I'm not exactly sure. And that's something that we all need to think about with someone like Capewell is, will he be able to keep the tries up? Because he has a fair few. I think he probably can. If he's going to be playing on the right side, which is a decent chance with Reynolds, or is Ricky going to play on that right? If he plays on the left, does he get the good ball that he needs from someone like Albert Kelly or Gamble or whoever's going to be on that left-hand side? Owned by 10% of teams. If you are going to pick him up, you're not going to be completely out on your own in terms of if he doesn't hit the heights, like you're not going to lose out exactly. If you don't pick him up, I don't think you're going to miss out either. So it's definitely a touch and go pick for me. But yeah, up to you. If you like him and you think he's going to be better in terms of his base stats in the Broncos, then could be an interesting pickup for sure. We move to Liam Martin, and I don't think he's as good an option as Capewell at this stage. Being priced at 40 with a 39 average, you look at a lot of his games and his PPM's not high enough at 0.6, right? It doesn't change too much with the minutes he gets, right? So he has a few, like look at 26 and 52 minutes. So some of those games he's still getting big minutes, 27 and 51, and the PPM stays low. He moves to a bigger role. Yes, if he scores a try, he's going to do well, but we exclude those games, and he's got a 41 in 75 minutes. So will he be able to get that many minutes? I think he should be able to. I don't see an issue with that. We've got a 30 in 80 minutes. He's looking at 6 tackle breaks and 8 missed tackles, right? It's just too many on the missed tackle side. For example, he's always getting 2 to 4 each game, a couple of random ones. I just don't see the opportunity for him to gain a lot of value, right? I think you'll at least get a 40 from him. You might get a 44. Right, he's got a 44 in an 80 minutes, and that's 29 tackles, 5 misses, 100 meters, a few tackle breaks here and there. So, but then, there's 2020 first game, but 23 in an 80-minute effort. There's just not enough games there where he's done really well. 32 in 80-minute efforts. So even as the minutes go up, his PPM drops just that little bit. So he'd be a little bit of a scary pickup for me on an edge position. When you can go for someone like Capewell, who's a slightly better player, but has a little bit more flash in terms of being able to score more tries and gets a little bit busier than what Liam Martin does. Okay, we move to Wade Graham. He's, it's a worry for me. I really love him as a player, but he's definitely close to that retirement in terms of that one concussion. Very similar to where Boydie Cordner was, I'd say, with the amount of time that he missed. Obviously, he missed the majority of last year. Just a great player, but it never translated to fantasy either. So he always scores solidly, but he was never a top gun, which is something we have to think about. Even if we look back to 2020, he had a bunch of scores here where he did really well. Good low to mid 30s tackles, 100 kick meters, 100 meters gained, scoring between that mid 40s and 50s there. 2019 is pretty similar as well, right? But is he going to play 80 minutes? They have a fair few good forwards. You look at his 2021 season. Yes, it was a bit interrupted. Obviously played the first 5 games. You look at those scores there and a couple of good ones, but then a 31, right? So that dents any of his value, and he's priced at 37. You're not making too many points there. I could see him be priced at 40 by the end of the year, but he's got 38, 55, 43, 42. Like, it's solid, but you might be making 5 points of value, and there's a chance that he misses a bunch of games. There's so many things to think about with Graham, but look, you're not going to. In terms of his output, if he's getting 70 plus minutes, I think he's going to score well enough to be decent for your side. But there's a good chance that if he gets concussed in one game, which is what happens in NRL pretty regularly, obviously a lot of guys can come back and play the rest of the game. But for him, if he gets some kind of hit in the head, I think that it's going to wipe him out for the game at least, and maybe even a couple of weeks. So I just think he's a scary pick. And at 1.7% of owners, you're not missing out too much there. All right, Tommy Gilbert. At 458, so he's going to be fighting for an edge position. He has a really solid PPM, which is great, right? And a lot of people have him in their side. Well, thinking about having him in their side. They haven't obviously pulled the trigger at 1.4% of ownership. The price is 37. If you look at his games there, in terms of minutes to fantasy points, he's got a PPM of 0.8. And we've got some games at prop, which actually weren't as good as some of his games. Just off the bench in general. So he's got 37 in 40 minutes there when he came in and played. But he was coming off injury as well, so just think about that if he gets a nice clean preseason, which he has, then he should be able to come in and do pretty solidly. And looks like he's fighting for that edge spot. So if we look back to a couple of the games in 2020, at the back end there. He had 72 minutes there on an edge for 57. He had 57 minutes for 30, right? So we're hoping for at least 60 minutes for him. And that would be one of his bad games, right? We got 45 in a 56-minute effort and 50 in a 53. So if we're picking him up on an edge, we're hoping that he at least plays over 60 minutes, right? And with games we're looking at there, he's got 44 in those 66 minutes off the bench as well. So I definitely think there's some upside for him there, around that 45 points, I'd say. We'd be looking at 45 to 50 if he plays over 60 minutes. We get the mid and the edge dual. And yeah, I suppose you're never in a bad spot picking up a hard worker. He's not someone that's going to score you many tries or get you many attacking stats. But if he's making big tackles, like you look at some of these games here, that 45, 48 minutes off the interchange, he's making 32, 37 tackles. And you'd hope that over time he improves his tackling ability and his efficiency as he gets a little bit older, a little bit more comfortable with his body. Yes, he was coming back from injury, I'll say again, last year. So be aware of that with someone like Gilbert. He's definitely someone on my radar, and I'd like to see what happens in the trials if he does get that edge spot. And then if he gets it in round 1, we can have a further discussion on Tommy. But that's my thoughts on him there. Okay, Bo for more. Very interesting one. With Proctor losing the captaincy, does that mean he's going to come off the bench? Is he going to be playing lower minutes? Does it leave a space for Bo to come in and start in that second row? So the question is does that open up 60 minutes for him? So with 60 minutes, is he able to average mid-40s, for example? We're obviously going to find out how it's going to work. But for him being priced at 36 with a PPM of 0.54, yes, that has some games in the center, so we can probably steer clear of that. But a 60 minutes average, does that get him up to 45? He'd need a PPM of close to 0.8. All right, let's have a bit of a look. So games at the start of last season in the second row, he has 52 in 80-minute effort. That is with a try. So if we exclude that, he obviously has scored a few in his time, but not too many to say that that's going to be happening regularly. 36 in 70 minutes, and that's only with 2 missed tackles, right? So pretty normal effort, you'd say. 35 in 80 minutes, 21 in 80 minutes, 51 with a try, 51 without, 49, 37, 56. So there's some solid games in there, right? 34 in 80 minutes in there as well. So is that enough? I don't think that's enough. I can see him hitting games with 51. I can see him hitting games with 30 and just bringing out an average somewhere between 36 and 40 if he does get that time. And we also don't know if that's going to happen. There's so many different things to think about. If he can get an 80-minute role, I'd say there's a chance that he's going to be worth it. But if he's off the bench, loses some value, you can probably pick him up at some point. That would be the other thing I'd be thinking of with Bo. That's probably all. Let me know, again, with all these guys, if you have any further thoughts to add to what I have said, please put them in the comments. That'd be great. And if you're new, hit subscribe and like this video so we can get it out to more people, guys. I really appreciate all the support so far. It's been awesome. Okay, Hylam Luki from the Cowboys again. So priced at 35 on his average of 32.6. So he's priced up, unfortunately, on that one. Let's go back to my notes. So for him, I'm seeing him at needing 70+ minutes to be viable. Let's obviously check him out in the trials and see if there's some natural improvement as a young fella. Definitely look good to the eye, though, in those last bunch of games. But the pricing we may have been priced out a little bit at 439. So obviously some lower point scores in lower minutes off the interchange, but has a really solid PPM during that time. He's got a PPM of about 0.86 and owned by 3.8% of teams at the moment. But what we're really looking for is those games in the second row during the back half of the year. 33 in 64 minutes, but only 1 missed tackle is not very good. 42 in 69 and also 37 in 54 with a try. So that's why I'm seeing him as probably, we're taking a gamble on someone who's pretty young and fresh to the NRL, right? We're going to need 70 to 80 minutes out of him, I think, to get scores in that 40 zone, somewhere in the 40s to make him worthwhile. So that's where I feel like we might have been priced out. If he was somewhere around Nanai's price point at 350, being priced around the 30 mark, I could see him as being a little bit more worthy of a spot in your side. But at this stage, I'm probably going to steer clear of Luki, even though I liked what I saw from him being able to score a couple of tries in those last couple of games when the Cowboys were struggling a fair bit. But again, natural improvement will be on the way for him. And we'll see what happens in the trials, that's for sure. Ellie Kitto is someone that I'm just worried that is he going to get a position in the side? For example, he's very volatile in general with his scoring. Came onto the scene in his first year and dominated as a cash cow and did really well in some big minute roles. But yeah, the super high scores, the super low scores in between, and then is he going to get big minutes? I'm not even sure if he gets that opportunity. So that's something to think of with him. But even look at the start of last year, and this turns me off straight away. 30 and 62, 38 and 80, 33 and 57, 29 in 70 minutes. So all not really good scores, and then obviously a good game with a try, good couple of games. But he's going to be streaky like that. You look at some of these games later in the year, not great. Whereas 2020 was a lot more consistent. So he definitely has some upside, but priced at 34, I can see him averaging somewhere along that. He's a good chance he's going to be in the bench. There's just too many variables for Ellie Kitto in that one. All right, Egan Butcher. Very cool one here. Like if he gets big minutes, it's going to be massive points. If there's an injury to Gus or to Tilly, then he's going to be awesome. Not priced out of it at this stage, especially if he's going to be on the bench to start us off. But you look at those bench scores and pretty solid PPM, right? He's sitting at a 0.91. Very solid, and then he gets a couple of opportunities at the end of the year. 56 off the interchange bench with 60 minutes, 63 in a 70-minute effort, and 60 in a 65-minute effort at lock. So wherever he plays in the middle or on the edge, he's going to be great. 56 tackles in that game against the Rabbitohs. It was obviously an important game against a tough team, so he did really well, held his own, 92 meters and 97 meters in those two games, which was great. All you really need from an edge if they're going to get a couple of tackle breaks and tackle hard. So if he ever gets an opportunity, he'll be owned by 30% of teams. Well, he should be anyway, because he's got some talent, being the younger brother of Nat there. So, and Nat's the other one that has an opportunity as well to get a spot, but he's always in and out of that starting side. And priced a bit too high in the mid 500s. That's why I didn't talk about him at this stage. So that's that. We move on to Raymond for Tyler Mariner. A lot of people still asking me in the comments what we're doing with him. Gus Gould came out and said he's fairly on track to get back for round 3. So there's no point talking about him too much at the start here. We're not going to put him in our side and leave him there. If he comes back and builds up a couple of bigger minute games, and then we can go, yep, awesome. So you're not going to lose too much value or gain too much value anyway over that first little period. Owned by 5%, that's going to be down to less than 1, I'd say, especially when we find out he's not going to be playing. So just keep that in mind for Raymond. But a really high ceiling is what we're looking at here. Look at 2020's games. He's got games of 67, 73, 56, 65, obviously with tries, but he has that upside. He runs a really good line, and when his floor is in the low 40s, you're getting someone priced at 32 with a floor of 40 and upside to boot. So he's going to be great when he comes back and gets some big minutes, but that's something that we'll get over time. So don't think about and worry about him too much at this stage. Okay, Carl Lorden. Still haven't found anything on Lockie Croker, so he obviously played 9 last night. He's going to be fine wherever he plays. He got a nice PPM of 0.71. Does he have some game in the centres? Nah, just hooker in second row. So yeah, you can see no matter where he plays, he tackles well, and also runs the ball well, runs a good line, gets a few tackle breaks and stuff. He's obviously going to lose a few there, but if you look at those big minutes in the second row, and if he can get that position off someone like Schuster, then there's, if he can get 4 games, for example, somewhere in the hooking position or the edge, then he's going to be at least 10 points undervalued and has that hooking and edge dual, which a lot of people are going to be looking for at the start of the season. So owned by 4.4% of teams. If he makes that starting side and we can see some longevity in terms of at least 3 to 4 rounds, I can see him being picked by many people, and I'd say that's definitely a good idea for Carl. But I'd be avoiding if he's on the bench to start, for sure. Too expensive for someone, a bench guy who might get 30 minutes. So there you go, guys. That's the edge position for the mid-range. Let me know what you guys thought of that. If there's anyone else you think I've missed, I definitely have gone through majority of the guys, even though some of them I don't think are great options. But just to give you all an idea of all the guys that are available and the ones you might be wanting to just hear something on. If there's anyone else I've missed, please let me know. I'll mention in the comments, or I can make them into another video. But I hope you enjoyed that. As always, guys, we'll catch you in the next one. Enjoy the rest of the trials. See you later.